Hello. Hello. How are you? I'm back. Seems like we were just here, guys, but we're back again. Now then, this go around, well, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say hello to everybody that's in the chat because I didn't do that earlier. Unique trauma obsessed, you are number one. You were here for, pretty washed out. That's kind of crazy. I wonder what happened to my light. Hold on, I'll see if I can fix it. Now I'm super blue. Why am I so blue? Oh, well. Hell's bells. It is what it is. Okay, you don't care what I look like. I'm just an old housewife on YouTube. Okay, Hybrid Posses, welcome. Good to see you. Hey, critters. Hi, Nancy Drew. Welcome back. And Political Crimes and Circus Clowns is here tonight. Welcome, Political Crimes and Circus Clowns. Hi, Nancy Drew. Jackie Hughes. Thing one. Where's thing two? And Sundown Farms is here. Sundown, I got to tell you, every time I see your name, I think about the movie Australia, To Faraway Downs. I don't know why Sundown Farms makes me think of Faraway Downs, but it's wonderful either way. And, you know, we old housewives on YouTube, we always need a good excuse to think about Hugh Jackman, don't we? Okay. All right. Is that everybody that's talking anyway? Calm in the chaos. Welcome, my friend. How are you doing? I hope you guys can hear me. If my microphone sounds good, would you put a 1? If you can hear me, put a 1. If you cannot hear me, put a 375. If I see the number 375, that tells me you can't hear me. Jennifer Adams, welcome. I am so glad that you are here. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Diane, welcome. Katha R, hello. How are you? And let's see. So let's do Calm in the Chaos. 1, but a little low. Is it still low even though I just fixed it? I feel like I made it louder. Let's see if that'll make it louder. No. If I can get it closer to me. Y'all should see the wonderful table that my husband made for me for my sofa so that I could sit in my nest and go live because I'm just a housewife. That's what old Jim Terry says, that our no, I don't think I can get any closer. Well, maybe I can do it this way. I think I'll do it this way. How's that? Is that better? Is that good? Okay. Old Jim Terry says we can talk about true crime as old housewives, but I don't think it's relevant if we talk about it. Only ex-detectives or current detectives and police officers have relevance when they talk about true crime. All right. So how does that sound? Is that good? Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. You're going to see. So my microphone changes colors. Watch that. Right? That Jim Terry, that is a legit microphone. Okay. Even for us old housewives. Okay, so I'm kind of giving the guy a hard time because why not, right? Okay. The guy is pulling down some legitimate numbers. So my opinion doesn't really matter. Okay, now then. But you know what? The other day when I had my problem on the freeway of Houston, Texas, hey, Vicky Carpenter, welcome. A disco housewife. Yeah, what? Shake it, shake it, shake. Shake it, shake it, shake. Shake your booty. Shake your booty. That was very old, wasn't it? I think, was that this, I don't remember how long ago that was, the 80s, maybe, I don't know. So anyway, so we could add Jim Terry to this conversation, because the topic of the conversation is caution, speech ain't free, right? Now, who knows what I'm talking about? Does anybody have an idea what I could possibly be getting to here in this true crime community when I say caution, speech? Well, it ain't free. Anybody know? Casey and the Sunshine Band. There you go, Common the Chaos. Anybody know? That's a scary experience, Jules, with your car. I had a similar experience, and it's scary. Thank you. It was, and I was surely upset and worried, that I destroyed it, but it's all fine. Okay. Yeah. So slander or being sued or being bombastic, being conspiratorial, engaging in, dare I say it, wild speculation. It used to all be fun and games here on the wild, wild west of YouTube. People used to be able to go live and talk about whatever ideas that they had. Remember that? You remember military bases on the moon? How about the world ain't round? Remember that one? How about George Bush was a reptile alien, yet not erectile dysfunction, a reptile alien. Do you remember that? Well, it would appear in the new world of 2022 that we are no longer blessed with this idea on YouTube of freedom of speech, or really for that matter, anywhere, because this past week, there was a huge civil case here in Texas, in Austin, land of the free, home of the brave. There was a huge case that really has not gotten any attention. I don't know what that's about, but it hasn't. And to make a very long story short, let's just say Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis made out like bandits. Okay? Now, had this case occurred in Massachusetts or California or Oregon, maybe not such a big deal, right? But the fact that this happened in Texas, it's definitely a sign that times have changed for us here on the internet. Now, what am I referring to? Well, I'm talking about Alex Jones, Mr. Infowars himself, Mr. I'm getting so overcome with my emotion and my interesting, explosive personality that I'm going to rip my shirt off right here in the middle of the studio. That guy. Well, he had a day of reckoning in the Texas courts this past week. He basically was taken to court by the parents of Jesse Lewis. And Jesse Lewis was one of the kindergartners that was killed by Adam Lanza in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, or Sandy Hook School in Newtown, Connecticut. It was a bit murky. It was a bit foggy. It was a bit foggy on how it was that decade, at least a decade after the shooting, after Alex Jones was at the height of his slander and defamation and accusations. Shall we call it accusations? I think accusations is a good word. More than 10 years after his accusations against everyone, I mean, really and truly, it was everyone. It was Connecticut State Police. It was the parents of the children that were murdered. It was the U.S. government. It was the government of Connecticut. Basically, he took everyone to task with this messaging that Sandy Hook never happened and that it was really all a false flag. Now, the guy was into it. He had Wolf Halbig come on. He had Jim Fetzer, who was a college professor. He found people, or they found him, one or the other. Somehow, Alex Jones came together with a group of men who appeared on the surface to have credibility, who offered up their own brand or their own type of proof why they believed that Sandy Hook didn't happen. And it was in full swing for a while there. I mean, for a while, there was some serious wild speculation going on. I mean, their wild speculation was at a level that made mine look like a Sunday school lesson. Not only did they offer wild speculation, but they didn't really say, this is wild speculation. No, they stated the information as if it were fact, and then they offered up documents and information proving something that made it appear, it made their claims appear to be true. Well, this, Alex Jones is a beloved, what do we call him? He's a beloved folk hero in some respect. Well, some people believe he's a beloved folk hero. Some of us think he needs a physician. Some of us are worried that something's wrong, something's bad wrong. And then others of us don't think of him at all, unless he shows up in a courtroom somewhere. Well, he did actually end up in a courtroom. Somehow it all got tied to Megyn Kelly. You remember her? She's the one that tried to embarrass Trump. And it turned out to be a disaster for Megyn Kelly, not so much for Trump at the time, but for Megyn Kelly, people were really surprised that there was such a large group of people that didn't appreciate the way that Megyn went after Trump. And by this time, Trump and Alex Jones were kind of besties. You know what I mean? And that was a weird idea. That was a weird idea that you would have a guy running for president on national stage or international stage, really, who had tons of money, and Donald Trump would appear, someone in his position would have plenty of access to the most brilliant minds in the country, in the world, right? You would think that if somebody is running for president and they're the front runner for the nomination, wouldn't you expect that anyone that they called on to have help in their presidential run would be able? Sorry about that, y'all. You would think that this person who's the front runner for the Republican nomination, that he would have access to the most brilliant minds in the world. And he comes up with Alex Jones. And people are like, these are strange bedfellows, Alex Jones and Donald Trump. But they're both very, unique. And they came together, right? Trump goes on this path of conspiracy about the government and about the way things go. And why are they doing that? Sorry, I'm having pet problem. My dogs are all trying to knock my Diet Coke over. So Trump, kitty dog, hush. So Trump and Alex Jones become great friends. This was after Sandy Hook had passed. The conversation about Sandy Hook had calmed, and they had moved on to now conspiratorial talk related to Hillary Clinton, the bathroom servers, the vast Russian conspiracy, and Hunter Biden's laptop from hell. I was trying to remember everything that was going on because it was a crazy time in American politics. Now then, so Trump has access to the greatest minds in the world, and he decides to form an alliance with Alex Jones, which was a bad idea because Alex may not be, well, sometimes he's overexcited. So I'm trying to be really nice and not commit slander, right? Now, somehow during this period where they all came together and made friends, and you had some of Nixon's people join in, and they were all going on Infowars together, and it was some pretty crazy politics happening. Well, Megyn Kelly reaches out to Alex Jones and says, hey, we're doing an anniversary type, 20 years or 15 years or something special on Sandy Hook murders. We would like to include you because you were a big part of all that conversation. And you'll have an opportunity to meet the families and make your apologies. And, we want you to do this. So he agrees. After a while, he agrees. She comes to Austin, Texas, where she proceeds to spend, 10, 12 hours. They're taping all day long. And they ended up only cutting out 3 minutes that they actually aired Alex Jones in this special. And basically it was a setup. It was a hit piece. He suspected that it would happen. And so they had their cameras rolling the whole time. So they had the full interview and the full conversation that ABC did not show. And so later on, he came back and he said, now, you heard what Megyn Kelly had to say, making it look like I'm still saying that nobody died. But then here's what I really said. And, he acknowledges that they did and blah, blah, blah. Well, sometime after that, a week or so, Owen Schroyer, who is, I guess one would say, like the top news guy besides Alex Jones. Anyway, he's one of these guys that's he's got his own show, something about war or something. He's got his own show, and he's a integral part of Infowars, and he's friends with Alex Jones and all that. And he does a segment where he takes the words of Neil Heslin, who is Jesse Lewis's dad. He takes the words of Neil Heslin and he plays it against words that were said by the medical examiner at Sandy Hook on the day of the killings, where basically the medical examiner says, we did not bring the parents together with the children. Not the time, not the place, and none of the families saw the kids that day, right? Well, Owen Schroyer goes on and he plays Neil Heslin's words, quote, where Neil says, I took my son to school with a book bag, and, by the end of the day, I held my son who had a bullet hole in his head and took him home in a body bag. Something like that. I'm not saying that's a direct quote, but that idea. Well, you and I know, because we're reasonable people, you and I know that it was sort of metaphorical speech, right? I mean, he's a father who's lost a baby. He's grieving horribly, and he's angry. He's angry about the gun problem. He's angry that this kid was able to get into school and do what he did. And he's reaching out. He's trying to tell his truth, and he's trying to tell his story. Owen Schroyer on Infowars puts these two clips up, one right after the other, and says, "Oh, so what is it, Neil? Like, did you really see your son and hold him with a gunshot wound in his head? Or did you not see your son that day? What is it?" And basically it legitimately, well, let's face it, he called Neil Heslin a liar without using the L word. I mean, he didn't say you lied, but the way he presented those clips and the way they set it up, that's exactly what he was doing, right? Owen Schroyer was still pushing that narrative that Sandy Hook didn't happen, that it was a scam, or it was a false flag, or it was something. I think the idea was like, oh, they're coming for your guns. Be careful, they're coming for your guns. And so it was presented in the way that this was organized and executed by government for the express purpose of helping with gun legislation with guns or something. So now you're caught up to what happened last week in Austin, Texas. And this is why I'm saying, I told y'all when it was going on, I showed a couple of days of clip, or we watched some of the trial footage. And I said to you guys, this is a case that's getting absolutely zero attention. However, if you are a YouTube creator, hey, Colorful PI guy, you listening? If you are a YouTube creator, you better go back and listen to what they said, because things on free speech and the freedom to say what you would like on a public platform is changing dramatically in light of this particular court case. So the exact word, I'm reading an article. I found an article by Joanne Sweeney, who is a professor at law at the University of Louisville, the Louis D. Brandeis School of Law. And Joanne Sweeney, or Dr. Sweeney, she put out an article yesterday that was published in a journal, Think, Opinion Analysis and Essays. You know, this is not a rag. This is for thinkers. She opens her paper by saying, Alex Jones, host and creator of the far-right conspiracy theory website Infowars, has received what is likely to be only the first of a series of expensive lessons about the importance of fact-checking. On Thursday, a Texas jury ordered Jones to pay $4.1 million in compensatory damages to the parents of only one of those children, Jesse Lewis. The parents are Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis. They sued Jones for defamation after Jones basically accused them of faking the death of their son in order to attack gun rights. Then they had another part to the trial, and that is where they weren't worried about compensatory damages, paying back Neil Heslin and Scarlett for money they lost. Now they're talking about punitive damages. And let's face it, this is Texas. We don't like to set limits, you know? So on Friday, after the 4.1 million was awarded, then they addressed the problem of punitive damages. And this is where they dropped the bomb. This was a mic drop right on top of Alex Jones's head. This jury of Texans, keep that in mind. This is not Oregon. These are people coming from a state that believe in the U.S. Constitution, and freedom of speech is right up there with gun ownership, right? In Texas, you no longer have to have a concealed carry permit. Anyone is allowed to carry a weapon, a firearm, because it's a federally protected right. So in this state where anybody can grab a gun and drop it in their purse and go to town, this jury said, no, Alex, you can't say whatever you want to say. There are, in fact, limits to free speech. Now, if we want to get down into the text of the law, then really this idea of freedom of speech is quite often misquoted. It misunderstood a bit, perhaps. But in truth, the freedom of speech is really that you're free to express your opinions and ideas without interference by the government, right? So you have free speech. You can't be muzzled by the government. That's what it is. But it wasn't the government that was the problem where Alex Jones was concerned. He had a platform. He was housed on YouTube. He had his own website. He was on many other social media platforms. When all of this Wolfgang Halbig and Jim Fetzer, when all of this talk was going on and all of this proven, that it didn't happen or did happen or whatever, it was all happening right here, like where me and you are talking right now. There are people right now today on YouTube saying whatever they want to say. I've often talked about this Barrymore Few thing. When the story first got out, I had some fairly certain opinions about what may have happened to Suzanne Morphew. But I really controlled the things that I said early on for, when he was free, before he was arrested. I was very careful about pointing a finger and making outright accusations. Once he was arrested, however, that changes, because once you get that arrest, then you know that this is a person who has been investigated. This is a person that has been investigated. There has been information, evidence that has been collected and cataloged, and that there are learned attorneys who have sat down with the police officers and gone through the information and have made a determination that they most likely will be able to get a guilty verdict. Like, they're fairly certain if they're making an arrest, which then starts the clock on the officials, on the government. If they make that arrest, they've got a case. They have put together a case that they feel comfortable with, which really widens the door from a perspective of accountability. It widens the door for me as a YouTube creator to say, well, there's a lot of reasons to believe that Barry Morphew may have harmed his wife, or in some way he may have been instrumental in her disappearance, perhaps. And then you can go and you can say he's been arrested. Here was the date of his arrest, and here are the charges that he's been charged with. And then you can go on and you can talk about all the different pieces of evidence and things that took place that lead you to this moment of maybe it had something to do with it. However, the very minute that they dropped those charges on him, you no longer have a reasonable belief that it's possible he could have been involved. If the government is willing to pull back their charges and say, no, just kidding. We're just kidding. We're not really going to trial. If the government is willing to do that after all the money and time spent, then there's a problem. There's a problem. Someone believes we're not going to get a conviction for whatever reason. Now, I blame it on Linda Stanley, but let's just say maybe they found exculpatory evidence. Maybe they did find something that said, no, he couldn't have done it. So you have to back off. Well, I guess you don't have to. If you don't want to find yourself in a court of law like Mr. Alex Jones, then you probably don't want to continue to pursue it. Why? Well, you might get compensatory damages of $4.1 million, but you may just end up with a jury that decides to make an example out of you, which is exactly what happened to Alex Jones. In fact, on Friday, Alex Jones sat there as Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis were awarded $45.2 million in punitive damages. So all total, they basically awarded $50 million to Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, the parents of one of the Sandy Hook children that were murdered. That's a pretty big spanking. You agree? Now, Alex Jones, Infowars is it was a lucrative business. In fact, they were making money hand over fist. Things changed. Trump lost the re-election. There were a lot of legal scandals where Trump is concerned. That naturally bled over onto Infowars because like Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, a lot of people that were regularly featured on Infowars were now in jail or facing jail because of their involvement with Trump. So all in all, the house of cards came crumbling down in essence. Whether you agree with everything that happened or not, it's not what's at issue. What's at issue is it happened. It just did. And whether it was right or wrong or whatever your opinion is about it, that's not really the point. The point is this fall from grace that Alex Jones experienced was quite real. There was Alex Jones had already been badly damaged by the failed re-election of Trump, all of the focus on the deep state, conspiratorial, the stolen election was big for him. The never-ending Pizzagate, where you've got child pedophilia for government officials. And so these stories that Alex Jones, that they were pushing on his channel, ultimately resulted in an overwhelming crash. It got to be too big. It was too nutty. It was too uncomfortable, and it was just too much to believe could be credible. We might be able to believe government, bases on the moon. Maybe that's okay. Or even a reptilian George W. Bush. But the rest, it got to be really, it was always. And Alex Jones was emotionally overwhelmed. He was screaming and sweating and ripped his shirt off a couple of times. And I mean, he was just a man on the edge. He was just out of control. And ultimately, he has filed for bankruptcy. Before they ever came out with the judgment, he had already filed for bankruptcy. Now, Jones calls himself a media broadcaster, and the media has been given quite a bit, or his media group has been given quite a bit of latitude to basically say whatever he wanted to say. There are other news sites like Breitbart and Newsmax. They're not even in the ballpark of Infowars, but they are conservative, right? They are definitely leaning toward the conservative side. But after what happened with the January 6th, what do we call it? What do they call it? January 6th. Is it a mob or so the January 6th Capitol assault? Is that a good way to put it? After the failed reelection and what happened on January 6th, and then the hearings that were had and whatnot, there was a great deal of public scrutiny now falling on these right-wing media groups that are really kind of fashioning themselves as being rebels against the government and that kind of thing. And so they've really sort of been forced to, they're being held accountable, that it's no longer sufficient to just say, it's my opinion this could be happening. Now it seems the courts are wanting you to have some level of fact or proof or evidence for anything you say. In fact, Fox News is being sued for $1.6 billion with a B, $1 billion by the Dominion voting systems, because Fox went and for quite some while made the assertion that the Dominion voting machines were rigged, and that it faked the vote count in the middle of the night while everybody was asleep. Trump suddenly began losing votes, which I don't think can really happen in real life, but this is what they're claiming. I have no way of knowing if that's true or not, and I don't want to know. I don't want to. That's too big for me to deal with. But the point being that something is changing now. I think for a while, YouTube and social media was sort of the Wild West, right? Like the contemporary modern Wild West. That if you were a political commentator, that you could go online and pretty well, say whatever you wanted to say and then say, oh, it's my opinion. That's all you had to say. Oh, it's my opinion. And then people would be like, oh, well, I can't be held accountable. Well, Alex Jones spoke with impunity for 20 some odd years. He came on the scene going after government corruption. He started his career as a young man targeting government waste and fraud, and he hid, well, he was protected by that veil of free speech, right? That you can't go after Alex Jones, who's saying these things about the government, because we have freedom of speech, which expressly says you're allowed to express yourself without the full weight of the government coming down on you. You can't be muzzled by the government, correct? But that's not what happened this go around this last week here in this Texas. What happened this week in Texas is that it was the parents of a murdered little boy who said, you can't say that to us. You can't target us as parents of a dead child and say, we didn't lose our kid. We worked in tandem with the government to make up something to come after your gun rights. So it was a bit of a twist, right? The free speech protection didn't really apply in this particular situation because it was Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis that were harmed, not the U.S. government. It wasn't the U.S. government telling Alex Jones, hey, you can't say that. It was the parents of this little kid that said, you can't say it. And the Texan jury agreed. And they ultimately awarded $50 million. Now, that $50 million, it will never bring back their child. It will never bring back their child. Will they get that money? They could. I would say that Infowars remains in operation. People that love Alex Jones, they love Alex Jones. They love his T-shirts that he sells. They love the what is it, prepper food. He sells vitamin supplements, things like that. People that love Alex Jones love Alex Jones. They're going to continue to watch his shows. They're going to continue to buy his products, and he'll continue to make an income. But now he's got another, payee that he's got to pay. That he's got to pay Jesse Lewis's parents $50 million. So it was definitely, a warning, and it was a warning. I believe. I don't think it was intended to be a warning. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis intended to say, hey, YouTube creators, you better be careful what you're talking about. You better be careful how you say it. I don't think in their mind they even had one thought about YouTube creators. But I think from my perspective, I think if you're a YouTube creator, you better pay attention to what just happened to Alex Jones. You better pay attention. This idea that you can say whatever you want to say and put it behind, oh, it's my opinion, or allegedly. It is the law does not work in that overly simplified climate. We're talking about personal responsibility for what being able to stand by what you say with some level of evidence, some way to credibly say, this is why I'm on a public platform saying these things that may hurt another person. If they drop the charges against Barry Morphew, if I go on my channel and I go and talk about, Morphew did this and Morphew did that, I am saying things that could conceivably harm him, that could interfere with his ability to make money, buy a house, be accepted in a church. I'm saying things that could realistically interfere in his ability to live a free existence. And since they dropped the charges, I don't have any defense. I don't have any defense for going into court and saying, well, I said those things because I have confidence in the government. And if a community is going to arrest him and charge him, then it's reasonable for me to believe that they have some proof and some evidence of what the charges are. And that's, in that case, I would be protected. But they dropped the charges. So if I continue to go after him and they come for me and I find myself in a court in front of Judge Murphy, good heavens, Judge Murphy doesn't care why I continue to talk about it. He's just going to say, hey, there are no charges. They have been completely dropped. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying things that could ruin a free person's existence? You have to be held accountable. Do you see what I mean? So this is actually what was in question with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It's exactly what was in question. That Amber Heard put her name on an article that said, Johnny Depp beat me up. Johnny Depp committed sexual violence against me. She can't just say, oh, it's my opinion, it was. That there has to be something to show that would say this is what happened to me. And you know, she lost her case, just like Alex Jones. So YouTube creators, we're kind of remember what Joanne Sweeney said. This is the first of cases going after people on a public platform that are stating thoughts and ideas that have the capacity to harm another human being without some level of being able to show that what they're saying is truthful, that it is real. Let's see, what else did Sweeney say? Okay, so she said early on in this Texas case, and she's a law professor. Early on in the Texas case, Jones tried to invoke his freedom of speech in multiple ways. First, he argued the case should be dismissed because he was speaking on a matter of public concern, and his speech, therefore, should be protected under the First Amendment. The second attempt, he argued that his statements against the Sandy Hook families were only opinions and therefore could not be defamatory. He lost on both arguments, largely on procedural grounds, because he refused to produce documents to the plaintiff's attorneys, despite a very clear court order. The jury never heard the merits of the case or the First Amendment defenses. The judge took an unusual path in this case and allowed for considerable amount of uncertainty on whether conspiracy theories can be defended on free speech grounds. The Texas Court of Appeals did indicate that many of Jones' claims would not have succeeded before it sent the case back to the trial court, whose jury determined then the payout. In response to Heslin's claim of defamation, Jones argued that his statements were not defamatory because he was just stating an opinion and not a false statement of fact. So if you go on your YouTube channel and on your public platform and you target a person, you give their name and you say, this person is a fraud. This person is lying and cheating to steal the money of their subscribers. This person is knowingly manipulating people to take their money. Based on what happened this week with Alex Jones, you can be hauled into court and the punitive damages may destroy you. So YouTube creators, we have been put on notice. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we are on notice. The Court of Appeals opinion, along with the massive payout, should give less financially secure conspiracy theorists pause before hitting the publish button. We YouTubers. Hey, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I do like conspiracies. I do. I own that. Now, I will say this. You and I gasp at the idea of a $50 million judgment, right? Let me put your little minds to rest. Not that you have little minds, but let me put your little hearts to rest. Not that you have little hearts. Let me just ease your fears. That work? Okay. Alex Jones has an estimated net worth, meaning in his bank account, of $135 to $270 million. $50 million he can pay it. Even though Infowars, the company, is in a bankrupt condition, Alex Jones himself has the cash to pay the Heslin family, right? So they're rich. They're rich. It's like they won the lotto, the Powerball, right? The size of this verdict validates the strategy of going after a conspiracy theorist on grounds of defamation. That is significant because it is argued that some of Jones' activity crossed the line into outright criminal incitement, and that is a much harder case to make. The standard is much higher. Now, Dr. Sweeney did not comment on the following in this article, but I will tell you this. Not only is Alex Jones on the hook for $50 million, but his emails and his text messaging between he and Donald Trump and Roger Stone, that all got turned over in discovery by accident. And because his attorney failed to act within a time frame of 10 days, that what would have been protected information is now no longer protected. And the plaintiff's attorneys have been contacted by Adam Schiff and the January 6th committee, and they are asking for Alex Jones protected communications with Trump and his people. So tune in, because we don't know yet where that's going to go. But the look on Alex Jones' face when he learned that these emails were now being requested by the January 6th committee, and this isn't conspiracy. This was said in open court. It's on video. But the look on Alex Jones' face was nausea. He was pretty sick. All right. So when I had my problem on the interstate, I was actually going to talk about this whole thing. Remember, I think the title I had was something like Alex Jones and Jim Terry, a cautionary tale. I think that's what it was going to be. But I never got to that part, right? I never got to the Jim Terry part. And here's why. Because I ran over some debris in the road. But let me do it now. So we have this huge judgment for Alex Jones. And now they're turning all this information over to the January 6th committee. And nobody's playing around anymore. They don't like the conspiracy theorists that are on public platforms. They want to hold people accountable for the things that they say on their platforms. And that is going to cut down on a great deal of the bullying and the game stalking that has happened on YouTube, where you kind of get one channel that fights against another channel. All that is about to become front and center for these lawsuits. Jim Terry is an interesting tale. I can draw a parallel between Jim Terry and Alex Jones, in that Alex Jones was enormously popular. Man, people loved him. Now, he was quite polarizing, right? Yeah, where did they cap it at 750? Not in Texas. We don't cap it in Texas. I don't know where that 750 is. But anyway, I got to quit looking at the chat or I'll get sidetracked. Alex Jones was enormously popular. He very intelligent, very interesting, outspoken, so much energy. People loved him. When he was local in Austin, people loved him. He grew a media empire single-handedly owning it all on his own, no advisors, and that is a rare thing to happen in today's world. Now, he basically went crazy. He basically sort of went and it just went off the deep end with all of his conspiracy, stuff. But the point is that he was big. He was larger than life. And that brings us to Jim Terry, colorful PI guy. He came on the scene in a strange way. And he was, or is, energetic, and he has all this information, and he's not shy about putting the information out there, right? But he's also angry. He's very angry with Dylan Round's mom. He's very angry by his own words. He admitted the other night that he's angry. But he has now started his own YouTube channel. This is hard to believe. He started his own YouTube channel. And when he goes live, he has more than 2,000 live viewers. When I say people love Jim Terry, the colorful PI guy, I am not kidding. They love him. Now, do they love him? Do they love him because he's funny, but he's offensive, and so is Alex Jones. He is smart, but he gets sidetracked by these details that don't matter, just like Alex Jones. He has amassed a beloved following that believe he can do no wrong, just like Alex Jones. And sometimes I think Jim Terry's frustration with the situation that he finds himself in the Dylan Rounds case, sometimes I think his frustration gets the best of him, and he says things that are really, really, really offensive against individual people, women in general, anybody who, or female YouTube creators. Sometimes he lets his mouth overload his ass. You know what I mean? So Jim Terry, colorful PI guy. Here, Alex Jones is a bit of a cautionary tale that you might benefit from. People love you. People love your content. They love the way you talk. They laugh. They're energized by you. Back off on the personal assault against Dylan Round's family. Just drop it. Like, you don't have to apologize or anything, but just drop it. But keep everything exactly the same, and then you have no worries. What's wrong with you? And Randy Forrest says, thank you, Randy. And Randy Forrest says, and Jim, stop the vulgarities. Yeah, he's going to be vulgar. That's part of his charm. He's going to be vulgar. It's who he is. He's a guy's guy, right? He's a man's man kind of guy. But really and truly, this is a game changer. What happened with Alex Jones, this is a game changer. People are going to be expecting something different from anyone that has a public platform. It doesn't matter if you're a little YouTuber. It's still a public platform. Your words have power. They have the ability to influence others. And if you are drawing in more than 2,000 live viewers in any given moment that you're live, people are going to hold you accountable, colorful PI guy. They are going to hold you accountable. I really think be careful with the targeting of one person. You really got to be careful. I'm telling you, it's a game changer when you go public. It's a game changer. So Snow Lion is an attorney. Am I right about this or not, Snow Lion? Naming an individual and then making accusations against that individual, that making accusations against them of criminal behavior, behavior that would destroy a reputation that you would have no proof of, that what you're saying is fact. Am I right about the ability? Snow Lion, the attorney, says, yes, you're right. So far, not with respect to YouTube. No, I get you. So far, not with YouTube, but Alex Jones was the first case. Alex Jones is the first case that someone is actually being held accountable for their public statements of opinion. It's first case. It's going to be a house of cards. I guarantee you. It's going to be a house of cards. Don't target individuals when you know accusations are false. If it is true, then there are no worries. I can accept that, Tommy Larson, but how often do we actually do that, right? I mean, most people are making these comments when they're forming opinion, they're extrapolating some kind of information. That is not evidence. The things that a lot of people are able to collect, it's not really stuff that would hold up in a court of law, to support you, to protect you for saying something. If I go live and I say Barry Morphew's a murderer, and I repeat that over and over and over, and I think he's a murderer because his wife went missing. If his super lawyers draw me into court, no judge is going to listen to me and go, oh yeah, it's perfectly reasonable for you to accuse this man of being a murderer simply because his wife is missing. Maybe his wife ran off with another man. You're going to get in trouble. You better hush. Piddlin' Bill says that old Barry is innocent. So that Suzanne ran off with another man, but he does shoot at little chipmunks. Okay. All right. So first case out of many, maybe Kate. I mean, we don't know that for a fact, but maybe. Let's see. The arguing bullet and drama, set up praying for peace. And yeah, I agree, Teresa. And that is something. We have a lot of creators right now that are small to medium-sized channels that have huge lawsuits hanging over their heads right now. The personal responsibility, the behavior, we have to do better. We really do have to do better. Diane says, this is the only time I disagree with Piddlin' Bill. I disagree with him too, Diane. I'm with you on this.
Barry's just a misunderstood guy.
He said, oh, Barry's just a misunderstood guy. All right. I believe Candace Cooley is 100% made a victim of stress at the hands of one person's narrative. I can't even imagine, Kate. I can't even imagine that your child goes mad. I don't even care if he's an adult child. I have an adult child. I would be beside myself if my kid just poofs into thin air. I can't imagine. And both these cases are exactly the same. Alex Jones, what he said about Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, about Jesse Lewis, that it was a false flag, that he didn't really die. Can you imagine that your child has been murdered in the most heinous way imaginable? Your little kid is at school right where he's supposed to be, not bothering anybody, just being a little kid. And he's murdered. it just erased in a moment, right? Can you imagine trying to come to terms with that at the same time that someone nightly is going on and on and on about how it wasn't real? Your child didn't die. In fact, your child never existed. I want you to think about the special level of agony in that situation. And I think when you look at Candace Cooley, your 19-year-old child is missing. Seemingly, aliens came down from outer space and plucked him off the earth because his empty boots are laying there. What else can you think of how empty boots end up just sitting there by the dirt pile? So her child is gone. She's frantic. You can hear it in those earlier videos, in those earlier interviews. You can hear the panic in her voice. Jason, the Dylan Round's dad, this man is weeping. He's weeping because he's worried about his kid, right? And you got colorful PI guy who has turned this into a personal vendetta, that there is going to be hell to pay because they have the audacity to fire him. It's a losing proposition, colorful PI guy. You may find yourself in trouble. You are well loved. You've got 2,000 live viewers. Learn from another guy who is very similar to you in personality. Alex Jones was king of the world, or the king of the social media world. Very successful, highly lucrative relationships with his subscribers. Just back off from the personal attacks on this family. It's not going to hurt you. Get over your rage that they fired you. Get over the fact that they said mean things about you. You have gotten your payback. You are successful on YouTube. That's the facts. You are loved. You are supported. Just quit attacking that family, and then you're golden. If you stopped that, then your channel is in no danger of anything, you know. So, all right, AJ got too big for his britches. I don't know. I think his conspiracy stuff just got him too. He just went go. It just was too much for him. I think he couldn't, you know. He believed it. I think he believed what he was saying. I think he really believed it all, and it made him crazy. Just made him crazy. So, all right. That's my video. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. I hope you guys have a great evening. I'm done. If you wouldn't mind, would you hit the subscribe button if this is your first time being here? I would also plead for a thumbs up, because I am trying to get in bed with the YouTube algorithm. And the YouTube algorithm likes a little thumbs up as foreplay. So thumbs up, comment under the video, subscribe, and hit the notification that says, I want all the notifications, and maybe YouTube algorithm will go, oh, allegedly innocent. I remember that girl. All right. You guys have a good evening. It was wonderful being here. I shall return. See you later.